I'm thrilled to be here. This is something that I have enjoyed for a long time. Well, first of all, I've been a Master Gardener since 2008. Love the program, learned so much, do a whole lot of things that are just so much fun. Did the home show this last weekend, and you get to talk to so many people, and I love to talk, so that's always fun. Also with the Master Gardeners, Trish and I are in charge of the Water-Wise Garden. She's also a volunteer with her husband. They volunteer at Freedom a lot. But we do the Water-Wise Garden over at the State Fair. So if you go to the State Fair, which you should go to the State Fair, it's fun. Back behind where the Holshouser building is, where the flower show is, we have our little garden. It's a very small one, but it is specifically timed to be at its height at in October, when people are saying, well, I don't have anything in my yard. That's the thing I get with this too, is there's nothing pretty in the fall and winter's boring. Well, it doesn't have to be. It can be very exciting. But if you go to see our Water-Wise Garden, and that one is truly a Water-Wise Garden. We plant our plants the one year, we water them for the first year, and then after that, they make it or they don't. So, and we also do what we tell everybody to do, is we mulch twice a year, and we do not have to fertilize our plants over there. They do beautifully without any fertilizer at all, with mulching twice a year. So if you have any questions about any of that, ask Trish or myself. I also have some soils kits back in the back if you want to do some soil testing. And we have cards to reach the Master Gardeners also back on the table. So let's get started with the winter sights and smells. At my house, a couple of disclaimers. My home is a mess. I have weeds everywhere. I don't care. I got over that a long time ago. I know where my pretty plants are, and when I come out my door, I see something here and it makes me smile. I come into my home, I see something over there, it makes me smile. I ignore the weeds. They're great pollinator plants. You know, you can sort of go, they're native, they're pollinator plants. So I justify it that way, but I got over that. And I don't live in a nice neighborhood with a lot of neighbors that are HOAs and that kind of stuff. I live out in the middle of nowhere, so I can have weeds when I want them. The other thing is, the reason I started coming to the Plantsman Tours years ago was because when you get into the Master Gardener program, they want to talk scientific names. I didn't know very many scientific names. So when they do the Plantsman Tour, they do the scientific names and then they show you the plant and they tell you about the plant. So all that knowledge is a wonderful thing. I'm not really good at the scientific names. I've worked hard at them. I do my very best. So if I mispronounce them, those of you that know them, like Trish, who knows all these things, she will cringe, but she forgives me. At the Water-Wise, she's the brains of the group, and I do the work and I talk a lot. So on the winter gardens, my first thing when I had all these plants and have space, I wanted something blooming all year long. That's not that hard. You can pretty much find stuff to bloom depending on the weather all year long. Stuff that smells good is a little more difficult, although I've pretty much got that covered now too. Again, if you have a cool fall or a hot fall, things may bloom sooner or later. Same thing with the spring. I mean, you know, we had 80 degrees in February this past year, and then we had 20 degrees in March. So plants suffered and weren't really sure what to do. So we're gonna start on your handout. These are the names of the plants in the order that I have them. On my slides, I did common name first and then the scientific name below them. On the sheet, I have scientific name first and then the common name. I also have the basic zones, basic heights and widths, whether it's evergreen or deciduous, native, or like on the hollies, the ilex, they need male and female. So that's out there too. I did not put sun, shade. I will try remember to tell you that as we go through the slides. If I don't, you have a question, just ask. So you can have lots of color with your trees, shrubs, bushes, ground covers. They don't have to be all green. We're very fortunate in this area that we can have so many different things. We have such a wide variety. Variegated with the whites and yellows. You've got streaks and spots on what used to be just a green bush. Now it can have all those fun things in it. They have a Leyland Cypress out here going towards you still have them, don't you?
There's two of them back there that are variegated.
One of them on the left is a little bit more yellow. The one on the right is a little more white. So if you want something, just not as a hedge, but as a pretty plant, and they're beautiful. So that was once just a plain old green bush. Now it's got some color to it. The other thing is you can do with texture. Plants, as you well know, can be fine, thick, big old fat leaves, spiky leaves with little prickers on them, or they can be very soft so that you want to pet them. We're just going to do a few evergreens without the flowers, just so you have some color or some structure in your gardens. I used to be an Akuba snob because, as you can see, the gold dust mane, they used to look like they were sick because they had these little yellow spots all over them, and I just didn't really like them. But now they have all these beautiful new additions that are with the streaks and big old splotches and lots of pretty colors, so they have ones that get very tall, some that stay fairly short. So Akubas are gaining ground on my list of plants that I love. Camassiferous, this is, they call it false cypress. This one is, I'm not sure which one this is, this picture, whether it's the gold knot or the king's gold, but they are pyramid shaped. You hardly ever have to prune them or trim them unless they get too big, and most of these stay a fairly small size. Camassiferous there are lots of those. I have a whole nother type of camassiferous in my yard, but I don't have any of these. But that's a pretty yellow color. You have Abelia, the kaleidoscope. That's a gorgeous plant. It stays small. It has all that color to it. It has the flowers in the spring and the summer and whatever else whenever else it wants to bloom. And the pollinators love that. The butterflies are always all over it. The Loropetalum, we had a talk about that some people think it's being used too much. Well, the tall ones, you know, there are tall ones, but they have also the small ones. You all have, what is it, Pixie or something out there that's a nice low growing, beautiful color. Again, pretty flowers. They can be anywhere from white, light pink, pink, almost a deep pink now. They have Tony Avon, I guess I'm allowed to, he has one at his garden where they have limbed it up and it looks a lot like a crepe myrtle. And I think that's lovely because these people planted the tall ones, they get too big, they have to hack them off, and they are not quite as pretty. Now you can limb it up and make it a really pretty tree. These are low plants, coral bells, well, heucherella, which you can see is a combination, a cross between those two. They're native plants. With the latest years of breeding, you can get so many colors. And they're evergreen, so that you have this pretty copper or these little striped leaves or this deep color all year long. And then you get the pretty flowers in the summer, early summer.
How do you know where to plant them? Because I planted them in the sun because it said they do it in the sun and they've died.
No, they don't like sun.
They don't like sun.
No. They're morning sun would be okay, up to straight afternoon sun, but they'll just fry in the late afternoon sun. They don't like that at all. So yes, and all of these are shade. The foam flowers I just think are so beautiful. That's the one thing I don't have in my yard of the ones we've talked about so far. Stonecrop or sedum, which is a lovely plant. I mean, there's so many different kinds, so many different colors, different heights. Autumn Joy is one that will get flowers will get to be about 1.5 feet, maybe even 2 feet tall. But a lot of these little things, they can just be low ground covers. We have a little section at the Waterwise garden that they're not going to be more than 2 inches tall, but they have all the pretty colors, different textures that you can put around underneath things so that you have little spots of interest all throughout your yard. Berries are something a lot of people don't think about, but they're great for the birds and for color. Ilex, which is a holly, this is our deciduous holly, they call it winterberry. They're beautiful plants. They have some gorgeous ones out by the necessary here on the grounds. The birds love them. They come in big berries, little teeny berries, big clusters, small clusters. They're bright red, deep red, yellow, oranges, all different colors now. So you can pick one that fits your color range. And all different heights too. Some of them are smaller bushes, some of them will get very tall. So when you look at these, it's a wide choice. You can just find one that fits your landscape. If you can have big ones, then you have all that beautiful color in the winter. Of course, plain old regular hollies have the beautiful berries. They also have lovely smelling flowers in the spring. I don't know whether the deciduous holly has a good smell or not. I have no idea. But the evergreen ones do have beautiful smells, and the pollinators love them. And hollies have the prickery leaves, but they don't have to. There are a lot of hollies that have just a little point at the top of them, or they now are rounded. Some of the smaller hollies don't have any prickers on them at all. It's just evergreen and pretty. The rhodia is a wonderful plant. It's something that is becoming more popular, thank goodness. It's evergreen with these long strappy leaves, real pretty textural interest in the garden. And then it has this very inconspicuous, dull little flower that's down here, but after it's gone, these beautiful red berries come out. They're just big old fat things that are just down there, and when you walk by it, you see that little red color, and you just go, oh, isn't that pretty? And these take a lot of shade. These guys are pretty much, this one right here is almost total shade now, and it bloomed beautifully this year. This one has a little bit of morning sun, but they're lovely. Now we're going to get into the flower part. These are without fragrance. This is the snowball bush that everybody talks about. This is my particular plant. I don't call it snowball, I call it snow avalanche because my balls are sometimes that big around. They start to bloom in the very early spring, so sometimes they get fried by a cold snap or a frost that we get, but they will come back out with maybe a little brown tinge to them, but they're just so beautiful. This plant, which they tell you is supposed to be, well, we were told it was supposed to be about 8 to 10 feet tall, is so large now that I have cut out part of it so I can drive underneath it because it's over my driveway now. So it's probably 15, 20 feet tall. But they have varieties that are much shorter, and they also have some that have little, like softball size or little ping pong ball size, and just as cute as a button, and they stay very short. I have one that's a much smaller ball that the bush is probably only about 3.5, 4 feet tall. Beautiful plants, so pretty. These are two that a lot of people don't know a lot about. The Pieris is a gorgeous plant. It's evergreen. It gets the long little racemes. Are they racemes? Okay, thank you. See, I told you she knows everything. Of the buds, so you have this little like pearls on a string, and then in about January, February, the flowers come out to this beautiful white. I think they have a pink variety now, but I wanted the white. And they don't have any smell, but they're long lasting. They are just absolutely gorgeous. And those are one of the things right at my walkway where I walk in and I smile when I see them. Lungwort or pulmonaria is a lovely plant. It blooms in the winter time. It'll be blooming in February, March. It is not considered an evergreen, but that particular plant right there is on the left-hand side of my walkway, and it's 3 years old. It has never died back. The one on the other side that gets 2 hours more sunshine in the summer occasionally just melts away. It just can't handle that extra 2 hours of sun. But you have these flowers in January and February. When we had that cold snap, I tried to cover them up, but they come back from it. They'll get they sort of lay down, but as soon as they warm up, they come right back up and the flowers are not damaged at all. But and it comes in all different, well, not all different colors. It comes in pinkish, some of them have some deeper blues. the spots on the leaves, and the leaves are fuzzy, so it's sort of not a deer-friendly plant. The deer don't really like them. Flowering almond is a lovely bush. It has all these pretty little flowers. That's a single flower or a double flower. It is a short-lived plant, which I didn't know that when I planted it, and when I was researching to make sure I knew what I was talking about, all these plants, I found out that usually about 10 to 12 years is about as long as it goes, which made me feel very good, because after about 10 years I was out there looking for my beautiful almond bush and it was gone. So I wasn't sure what happened to it, but now I know that it probably just had filled its lifespan and was gone. But they're just lovely, and they're out in usually February, March time. The winter jasmine is a strange looking plant. It's for people who like things nice and neat and tidy. This is not your plant. If you like things that spill over a wall or just climb along the ground, you can also trellis it. And that's a note on your thing. If you trellis it, it can be very long, because the runners can be 10 or 15 feet long. But the little stems are that pretty green all winter long, and then in the very early spring, again, February, March kind of time, these pretty little yellow flowers pop out, and they're just as happy as can be. But you can let it go on the ground as a ground cover, and then the leaves come out after the flowers are gone. That's one of the fun things about scientific names, is you can sort of catch some of the plant by it. The scientific name is nudiflorum, which means it's naked stems. The flowers come out on a naked stem, basically.
How much sun does this plant like?
It will take full sun. I have some in full shade.
Okay.
The flowering is very different. The ones in full sun flower like crazy. The one that I have that's in almost total shade, has the pretty yellow flowers, but they're much more sparse. But that's a nice plant too. Yes, Matt, yes, sir.
On that last slide, I have that winter jasmine. I acquired it somehow, I'm not really sure, but it seems that mine has gotten quite leggy, lays over, and is it attaching itself in another
It
spot,
can.
like an
It can.
azalea, and then taking off again?
It can.
I thought so. Okay.
Yeah.
I need to do that.
And you can prune it too if you don't like it. You can.
Well, I like the plant, it's just sitting wrong.
Oh, we all do that, don't we? Yes, yeah. Read the label and go, but I want it here. You always go, oh, I knew better. Most people know, and I'm sure most people in this room know about the hellebores or the Lenten roses. Again, with the breeding programs now, you can find all different colors. They have some deep, deep purple ones that are almost black. Most of them now, they're breeding so that the faces come up. The old-fashioned ones are like this one. This one's an ancient one I've had forever, where their little faces are down. So on a ledge, they're beautiful because you can see them, but you sort of have to pick up their little faces and look at them. Most of them have spots now. Some of them have some streaks, full solid colors. And most of them sort of fade to this funny green color, which is lovely. And it's an evergreen bush. It will do well in, this guy back here is in total shade. It has an edgeworthy in front of it, a camellia on the other side of it. What's in front of there? Something else that's green all the time. So it never sees sun, but it still blooms like crazy back there in that totally dark shade.
And they're highly deer resistant and
Yes,
long blooming.
yes, and they will bloom all winter long, basically. You start sometimes as late as December or November. Yes, ma'am.
If nobody's been out to Tony Avent's place for that early, his open house, whatever they
Right.
call it, his collection is stunning.
Oh, yeah, you see some beautiful.
The color combinations, that time of year was just
Well, that's the nice thing, and like Marilyn said, they last for a very, very long time. They're evergreen. You have these pretty leaves. Some of them are very, very large. Some of them even now have thin leaves so that they're more strappy. So you can get a leaf structure that will maybe work in your yard instead of just having the little palmy type leaf.
The bear's claw, bear's foot has more like palm leaves.
Yes, I couldn't
And
think of
it's
it.
one of the earliest bloomers, like November, December.
And it lasts forever. It's just, pretty thing. They're just not high. Those can get to be about 2 feet tall. Most of the ones on the other picture were only about maybe a foot to 18 inches. But you can put them under things. You can put them lots of different places. This is good fun. Heather or heath, it's technically heath, but a lot of people call it heather, can be a little fussy, but I have had very fortunate luck with them. They're on hills, so they drain very well, sort of like a lavender. I don't do lavender, but I've done heath. I love it. I took these pictures. I signed up for this talk after all the winter flowers had bloomed, so I had to go back to my pictures and find ones. I had done these before they were in full bloom, but you can see, and they bloom for a very long period of time. And you can see this is a regular way Pinterest, but how pretty it is. It has sort of a pine-looking branch on it. They're very soft. You sort of want to pet them. And they have white. These are white flowers. Then I have I don't have one that pink, but these are light pink. Here is a side of my house where the heathers or the heath is here. This is a weeping mulberry. That's another thing in your yard. You can put structure for things that are weeping. The Arboretum has a wonderful collection of weeping plants as you walk up the first walkway. Gorgeous things. Very fun. And it's easy to propagate too. When we get into some of the native flowering dogwood, the pretty white that we're all used to, the pinks, I prefer the really, really soft pink. But the brighter pinks are more common. They have these beautiful berries on them too. If you've ever watched the cardinals come and take them and go off with them. They have everything from the pure white to, like I said, the light pink, the deep pink. They have variegated leaves now. They have our native dogwood has had a problem with some disease. The anthracnose has been really tough on our native dogwoods, but in doing this research, I found an article that said they have developed some new native dogwood varieties that are more resistant to it, which is wonderful because I've lost 2 to that. But they're such a pretty plant, such a beautiful plant. Then probably one of my most favorite tree type plants is the redbud. This is my favorite plant probably on my property. Well, I say that until I see something else. But that was a forest pansy that we bought when forest pansy first came out. Has the purple leaves, has these beautiful flowers. That is coming up my driveway. This forest pansy's over here, and then there's a tulip magnolia over here. You can see my snowball tree is right in there. And we don't have any leaves on the trees yet. This picture over here is why I was saying, you need to be smiling when you go in or out of your house. Walk out of my house at this time of the year, and I look to the right, and this is what I see. I have a traveler redbud that's a weeping form. This one is, I think, a native. He's just sort of volunteered beside my parking pad. And this is Oklahoma redbud, and then this one is Appalachian red. And I see that just looking out. And it's just, if you don't smile, there's something wrong with you. Now we're getting to the fragrance. They have a great collection of witch hazel here. Lots of different ones out where the tree line used to be. I think they have some up there by the new gate. There are 2 different kinds. This one, the Virginia, is a little more, it doesn't get quite as large. It has these, they both have these beautiful little frilly flowers that have excellent smell, just beautiful. And they come in the bright yellows, sort of orangey coppers, sort of a reddish tinge to them. The Vernalis, is that how you say it, Trish? Is a little more leggy. It gets a little bit bigger. It sort of suckers a little more from the bottom, but it would be something that you would be able to put back at the back of your gardens or the back by a fence to make it much nicer. I didn't see any of those in a yellow, but they may come in yellow. I don't know. That's something else I don't have. I have, oops.
Will they bloom in shade?
Heart shape.
I think, yeah, I was going to say, I think they will part, but again, you won't have as many flowers. But, you know, the smell is worth it. Winter hazel. I love winter hazel. It is so beautiful. It's not a very pretty bush. It has ordinary type leaves, but in the wintertime, I had planted, well, they have to be in the same pot. I planted this plant, and about a year later, I'm out weeding in the wintertime, and I'm smelling this wonderful smell. It was a beautiful, pretty sunny day, and I finally figured out it was this winter hazel that was blooming. Sweet smell, absolutely, these translucent type blooms. In that same pot, I got a twofer. I got these blooms, and then it also had these blooms. So one half of my bush is the yellow, and the other half has the little frillier bloom with the red center to it. I like the smell of this one. It's a little sweeter for me, but this is also lovely. I mean, and then you have that winter interest of the pretty red spot in the middle of the pretty yellows. A lot of the winter blooming, smelly plants have staggered blooming periods because they're in the winter, they're going to get frosted, they're going to get frozen. So you can see on this plant, you can see this guy is opening up, he's nice and wide, this guy's about to open, this guy's probably history, you see the speckles on him, he's probably been frosted a few times. Here's a bud that's about to come open, here's some very tight buds, so that if we get a frost this night or a freeze, these guys will be gone, but this guy will be protected from in the bud form. So a lot of these winter plants do that staggered blooming, and it's not, most of them aren't even that they bloom at the bottom and work up to the top. A lot of it is just staggered all over the entire limb. But that's a beautiful plant. Doesn't get very large as far as I know. I think on there it's like 4 feet, and that's about what they are. Most people know about winter daphne. You cannot argue with the smell on winter daphne. I have killed enough of them to, but I think I may have one actually that's going to make it this time. They are a little particular about water. They like very good drainage. They don't like a whole lot of water, period. They like morning sun or maybe some middle afternoon sun, but they do not want your late afternoon sun. They come in a solid green color, or both of these bushes are variegated. I think these are, because Dennis Dremel let me use these, I think both of these are from your arboretum. They have these real pretty pink, or the light pink, or white blooms. They'll start blooming pretty soon, won't they? I'm trying to think when the bloom is.
A little later.
January, yeah, January. But they're just beautiful, and they stay small. I think the largest one I've ever seen was about 4 feet tall. Most of them stay at the smaller heights. But that's
They are short-lived and very susceptible to root rot fungus.
yeah. That's why you've got to make sure they drain really well, because I think Tony Event was saying he had a big one in his yard, and they had a lot of rain over several days, and he said he could just watch it go downhill because it was just too much water for it. Winter honeysuckle. People say honeysuckle, and you sort of cringe. It's like saying mint. You know, you just sort of freak out. But the winter honeysuckle is, and you can see the bloom does look like a honeysuckle, and it smells so beautiful. It's a bush though, and it's not a very contained bush. It can get pretty leggy, but again, if you put that at the back of your fence, the smell will just cover your yard. It's just wonderful. Just a beautiful smell that just floats everywhere. And you can trim it, you can prune it, you can trim it back. Star magnolias, these are one of the plants a lot of times you hear you should buy it in bloom, and this is one that you probably should, because when you get some of these fancier blooms, they sort of don't smell quite as nice as they used to. But this one is just a gorgeous plant. It gets a lot of afternoon sun, so I didn't think it would do as well there, but it does very well there. And you can see, this is the pink one over here. This is in front of my old house. It's just starting to get some little buds on it, and again, here are more buds that are very tightly held, so that when the frost comes and kills these blooms, the next blooms can come out and it will be able to be beautiful for a long time. I mean, that'll be in flower for a good month easily. This one also was a twofer. When I planted it, it was a teeny little plant, and one side has a slightly lighter pink flower with a nice, really nice smell. The other side has a little darker pink and not quite as heavy a smell. And I've traced it back, and you go, okay, 2 plants in that. That's all right. Then I have the variety. But those are so pretty, and I love a magnolia. I don't care what kind it is. A magnolia is beautiful. Now we talked about the snowball bush, which was a viburnum. Viburnum is one of those families that you can find just about anything you want. They're evergreen, they're deciduous, they smell good, they don't smell good, they have huge flowers, they have smaller flowers. Just great, great family altogether. This particular, these are both the Korean spice. They're both yes, they're the bigger one. Because this is down by my basement, and it's probably 15 feet tall. Then I have another one that is the compactum, and it has never gotten over 4 feet tall. But they both smell wonderful. Just an incredible smell when you're walking past it. This one is Burkwoodii, that is just a lovely plant. It also has a very good smell. I don't have any of it in bud because it's on the opposite side of my house, and I don't see it till it's actually in bloom. But that's just, and I put on your sheet after the Burkwoodii, I have one that's Dawn. It begins with a B. When I did my research, there were several people that said that that was the earliest blooming with incredible smell. I don't have one, so I'm going to have to find one so I can plant it and see if they're right. So I put that on there just.
Atlantic Nursery has it.
Who does?
Atlantic Nursery.
Oh, cool. Okay, well, I'll be there. But that's what's the fun about plants is you just go, oh, I don't have it. Oh, I can't live without it now. So I dream about it. So. But those are lovely plants, and they're these pretty. You can see how pretty those buds are, and then they come into this light pink. Some of them are almost pure white, but most of them have that pretty pink tinge to them. This is one of my favorite plants. I just love this thing. Mine is leggy because it is next to the house and it doesn't get as much sun as it should, but I love it. These two, I think, are both from the Arboretum, if I'm not mistaken, and you can see, no, this is ours. This is ours at the Waterwise. Yeah. You can see how nice and round they are, because this bush, like most plants, when they have a new shoot coming out, they do a V kind of thing. The Edgeworthia does a 3. So it keeps the plant if it gets enough sun, keeps it looking nice and round and very full, which is sort of cool. But they have these little hanging down flowers in a cluster. Each one of those little bumps is a flower. And as the winter progresses, you have a nice warm day and one of those little flowers opens up, and then it gets cold, it comes back. And then a couple more days, you'll get 2 flowers that come up. And as they age out, like you can see on this one, as they age out, they'll fall off, and the next row will start opening up. And when they're open, the smell is amazing. I walk out my front door and it's just wonderful. But, so mine's leggy, and it should be pruned out a little bit, but I don't bother. But you see these little things hanging down all winter long, and so you have that to look forward to. Plus, in the summertime, when it's leaved out, it has a long leaf. It's very soft leaf, very wide, sort of a strappy looking, almost tropical kind of look to it. Just really pretty. And I have the old-fashioned kind. It is probably 6-7 feet tall, about 10-12 feet wide. But they have lots of new cultivars. Y'all have several out here that are the smaller varieties that don't get nearly as large. But that's such an Edgeworthia. I just love it. Sweet box, another one that you shouldn't live without it. Sarcococa, what a name. I love it. These are mine. Well, not this one. That's Dennis's. This is purple stem. I didn't read the description as well as I should have. It only gets to be about 18 inches tall, but it suckers a lot. So, which is wonderful if you have an area where you can let it do that, because the smell is amazing. It's very hard. It likes a lot of shade. This guy gets maybe 3 or 4 hours of sun. This one is, Confusa. It is to be about 4 feet tall, about 3 feet wide. I think it's a little different on mine, but this is mine, so I know what that one is. Has real teeny, well, you can see the flowers, teeny little flowers, teeny tiny little flowers that you hardly even see, but you'll smell them for yards. And then,
When does it?
blooming, not quite now. November, December, January, February, depends on when it wants to. Really, if it gets warm weather, it'll bloom a little earlier. Most of the time, it's a January, February kind of time. And then the Confusa has the black berries that come on it, so that's sort of fun. This one has red berries, although mine has never had a berry. But the smell is beautiful. It's evergreen. I haven't done anything to them.
It's deer resistant, and it's an excellent alternative to using autolugans for foundation plantings.
Oh, I tell people all the time, they're a little pricey because you can't buy them at Lowe's and Home Depot. But you can get these, and you'll be so much happier with them because they're well-mannered. Well, this one will spread, but this guy is well-mannered, beautiful. You can prune them if you want to get them to a level height. You don't care. Tea olive or Osmanthus, and this is another one that it can be blooming right now. My neighbors, I walk out of my front door, and my neighbor who is like where the gate is up there, that's how far her tree is from mine, I can smell it. It's just, I just stand there and go, oh, I'm in heaven.
Very brief though.
Well, see, it also bloomed this summer a little bit, and it will also bloom in the very, very early spring occasionally. So you never really know when it's going to pop out, so you can walk out your door and you go, her tree's in bloom, oh my goodness. And we were talking about the Osmanthus. This one is the Fortunii. It has little teeny bumps on it. And this one does not. So that's a difference in being able to tell which one's which. A lot of the research said that fragrance didn't live in this area. They don't read the books. My neighbor's is 2 stories tall, has a trunk on it that big around. She's had to prune it back so she can walk under it. So, and it gets full morning sun, afternoon sun, but only partial late afternoon sun. But it's a beautiful plant. Obviously, it does just fine. And I live in a cold spot. I'm in the southern tip of Wake County, but I will have frost when nobody else. I'm scraping my car and, oh no, I didn't have to do that one. I did. But, and they have lots of different kinds of Osmanthus. There are some that will stay small. There is a Goshiki Osmanthus that is a variegated form. I have been told it has a wonderful smell. Mine, as far as I know, has never had a smell to it, or bloom that I know of. Very slow growing plant. I planted it at about that height. It's probably about that height now, and that's been 7 or 8 years. So it's very slow growing, but it's a beautiful plant. This is how you learn things, because I sent somebody down and I said, I want that variegated holly. He said, it's an Osmanthus. I said, no, it's a variegated holly. And he said, no, it's an Osmanthus. You know, he works there. He should know. So I went and showed him the plant, and he showed me the label, and it says Osmanthus. And I go, oh. So now I know how to tell the difference. A holly, an ilex, is an alternate leaf pattern. The Osmanthus, O, is opposite. So I'll never be embarrassed like that again. But, so if you're out there and you see something that has opposite leaves, it's an Osmanthus. But that's a lovely plant. Evergreen, of course. I had a good friend, she called me up, she said, I found something you don't have and you don't know what it is. I said, okay. She says, she calls it an Oregon grape. I said, it's a Mahonia. And she said, how did you know that? I said, because I know Mahonias. They have some beautiful ones out here near the road, some gorgeous, gorgeous plants. These are just so wonderful in smell. They have, is it sunset or sunburst or something you have up there that has really tall, beautiful yellow flowers on it that smell wonderful. And this is a fun compound leaf. It's, I mean, that's the whole leaf right there that has the little leaflets on it. Then it has these little grape-like fruits on it. And that's why it gets its name, Oregon grape. But that's it's a very bold statement because of the leaves and the structure. It's a very bold type plant to have in your yard. Now this is my last slide, and this is one of my favorite amazing plants. Prunus mume by Apricot. You go, why are these plants blooming in the wintertime? And you go, well, there's got to be a reason. I have one that I've had planted since about '98. It's an old, ancient plant, love it. One time it was one of those beautiful winter days in January or something like that, and I was out and about, and I was looking at my plant, and it had, the closer I got to it, the noisier it got. And I looked in there, and there's all these bugs, bees, I assume bees, wasps, flies, everything, just buzzing around. You forget that those poor creatures that come out on those warm days have to have something to eat. So Mother Nature provides that with these winter blooming plants. So that, and you can see it, this is also one that has the plant, the flower out, almost open, tight buds. There's some very tight buds back in here. It will do well in full sun. Sometimes it might struggle a little bit at first. It will do very well in almost a good partial shade. They'll do just fine. They have the single flowers, they have double flowers, they have light pink, deep pink, white. They have the weeping form. You have bridal veil out there that's a weeping white. It's just beautiful. So those are my flowers that smell and interest in the winter. Anybody have any questions? Okay.
I have something.
Oh, yes,
I
sir.
looked up the Mahonia. We have one called Winter Sun.
Winter sun. Okay, I knew it was sun something. So, but that's a beautiful one out there by there's a big pine tree out there, and it's somewhere around that. Yeah, that's pretty.
You have a problem that you have too many after you have one.
Mahonias?
Yeah, mine reseed everywhere.
Prunus mume, yes.
Oh, Prunus mume.
Yes.
Mahonia, I just have one.
Some Mahonias will spray.
Okay. Okay.
And there's at least one species of Mahonia that's on the invasive plant list. So make
Okay.
sure which one you buy. I can't
Okay.
remember which
It's like
one it is.
the chase tree. You have to be real careful which one you get on
Yeah,
that.
because it does.
And it's like the hellebores. Some hellebores seed out everywhere. I've never had that issue. Never had that issue. So, yes, ma'am.
I suggest that you walk the winter garden and look down. There's iris, there are.
Oh yeah. Oh, I had 40 plants before I even started researching. I mean, just went around my yard and I'm going, this is what I want to talk about. And unless you want to be here for 3 hours, I had to weed out things. But yes, you get in there and you start looking, like you said, I didn't get into ephemerals or bulbs or cyclamens, like iris, like you said, the little teeny little Japanese or.
Well, some of them are just as cute.
Oh yeah. You have to look, but yes, there are so many other things that you can plant in the wintertime. This is just, I think you can probably get all of these without any trouble. All but the one is in my yard, and I've had them for years, so I knew I could talk with a little intelligence about them. Anybody else? Thank you.